I've got some new strings on this. This is the 1880s Fairbanks and Cole that y'all have seen me playing a lot. Y'all let me know if you can hear me or not. The main reason I tried to do this is to start. I've got a new mic. I'm trying to make this thing work so it'll sound a lot better. Hello. Hello. I don't think it's working. Can you hear me, Robin? Okay, good. Hello, everybody. I was actually trying to schedule this for later. I wanted to start this at like 11 o'clock or something, but I wanted to test the microphone, and the damn thing started streaming on me. So I'm pretty new at this. So this is that 1880s Fairbanks and Cole banjo that had the fishing line on it. And I just put some cheap Labella number 17 nylons on it. They've changed the formula on these number 17s, I think, since I was buying a lot of them years ago, and then I just quit for a while. But now I think they've changed the formula. The strings are a little bit more opaque. Remember, they used to be kind of clear. Anyhow, they're still stretching out, I guess. But well, has anybody got a conversation starter, a question? So Neil is asking, how do you get into the 432 hertz tuning? I love the sound you get when you do it, but I don't know how to get there. Well, Neil, the only way that I've been able to get to 432 hertz is with an electric tuner. Most tuners will have a setting where you can change it, and yours, the standard setting on these tuners is A440. So when you strike an A note, it registers 440 hertz on the machine. I don't know what all that means, but A440 is the standard stuff. So usually, like on tuners I have, you can get in there and you can adjust that so it's tuning you not to A440 but to A432. You just drop it down, and your tuner probably has that option, because playing in 432 is also popular. 440 is the most popular, but there's all kinds of like I learned about it. If you guys aren't familiar with what we're talking about, 432 hertz is supposed to be like, I don't understand, but it's like the sound register of like the human heart. Like when it's pumping blood, the music that it's putting off registers at 432 hertz. We all play our music higher, at a higher frequency, up at 440 hertz. So that's all that is. A lot of like hippie meditation music. If you type on YouTube and you search for 432 hertz, you'll get a lot of like hippie trance meditation music. Some people swear it really helps them relax. So I was doing that for a while on my banjos. I was tuning them to 432 hertz just for fun. I don't know. People said they liked it. I like it because it's a little bit lower. It's a whole deeper, darker frequency. So Neil is asking, yeah, what kind of, even the old cheap electric tuner that my aunt bought me when I was a kid, was the one I used forever, and even that cheapo thing had a thing where you could change it. Lately, I've been using one of these little Diodario like micro tuner. You can put it over the front. I like it because you can clip it over the back. So if I'm going to be on stage or something, nobody really is going to notice that. Clips on the back. I bought one of these right out. I went to a show somewhere, and one of the guys in the band, I was watching him, and in the whole performance, he had this thing clipped on his peg head, and I never even noticed. And I've always hated the way that looks on stage or something, or in film. I would never leave that on. But he left his on through the whole performance, and you couldn't really tell it was there. So I was like, oh shit, time for me to buy one of them. So Dog 3579 is explaining to us that A440 means when the string is tuned to A, when you pluck it, it vibrates back and forth 440 times a second. So if that's accurate, that makes sense to me. So 432 hertz would be, lower tension. It's going to vibrate back and forth fewer times per second. So mimicking more of a natural sound, I guess. I don't know. You'll notice that I haven't been doing that for a while, but just because when I started doing these teaching videos, it helps people if I'm just in A440, because that's what y'all are pretty much all in. So we standardize if we're going to be teaching, trying to broadcast and mass communicate. We'll standardize a little bit. Thank you, Texas Baptist. Okay. I need to tighten those up a little bit. Texas Baptist is asking if I can play I'm a Good Old Rebel. I never learned the words to that song. The melody is a classic old melody. I think the melody goes back to England, I'm sure. I am a good old rebel. I can't think of the melody right now off the top of my head, but I know I've picked that melody before because it's an old melody. It goes to a lot of different songs. Oh, the song that I can't get no letter from home. What song is that? Oh, Lordy me, oh, Lordy my, can't get no letter from my home, poor boy. That's in a standard. I learned that song when I was a little kid off of the Black Banjo Songsters of North Carolina and Virginia album. I think it's John Snipes. Can't get, and it may just be called "Can't Get No Letter from My Home." I'm gonna sing it. Oh, let's see. Oh, Lordy me, oh, Lordy mine, can't get no letter from my home, poor boy, can't get no letter from my home. My woman, she won't write to me, my baby won't write to me. She won't write me no letter, she won't send me no word. She knows how to make a man feel bad. Oh, me. Oh my, I can't get no letter from my home, poor boy. I can't get no letter from my home. Going up north, gonna throw my britches off and dance in my long shirt tails all night. Dance in my long shirt tails, singing oh me. Oh my, I can't get no letter from my home, poor boy. I can't get no letter from my home. That's it. It's called Going Up North, Johnny G29. Yeah, Going Up North is what I call that. You can look up on my YouTube. There's me doing that. Look up John Snipes. I'm pretty sure doing Going Up North. If you want to get, it's either John Snipes or John Jackson. Yeah, it's similar to Georgie Bug, Sean says. Yeah. Yeah, it's basically the same. Georgie Bug is dead. Last word he said. Don't let a woman have her way. Don't let a woman have her way. If you let her have her way, she'll go and stay all day. Don't let a woman have her way. I guess it's the same. I don't know. Georgia Buck never didn't quite spark my interest as much as songs like Going Up North or Old Blue. Old Blue is a real simple song. I've been playing that with my guitar player. You guys have seen Bo Wilkie. He's been on here a couple of times. He really likes that Old Blue song, and he plays the hell out of it on the guitar. My banjo accompaniment is real simple, you know. I had an old dog, his name was Blue. Come on, Blue, you good dog, you. All them pretty gals gather round. Didn't have a penny to go round. Dog sounds. Me and Old Blue went out on the hunt. He'd treat a possum in a hollow stump. You know from that he was a good old dog. Come on, Blue, you good dog, you. Love that song. Robin says she wants to hear Shortening Bread. if y'all can. Put on the skillet, throw away the lid. Mama gonna bake that shortening bread. That ain't all she gonna do. She gonna give a little party too. That's a fun one. I really love to play that song. Dave wants to know where he can get the words to these. Well, so all those songs I just played, for some reason, we just went on a little run of the Black Banjo Songsters of North Carolina and Virginia album. So if you need to get a copy of that album, Cecilia Conway, folklorist from North Carolina, she recorded all those, interviewed all those guys and gals, and I think took photographs, and she made that book. The book is called Black Banjo Echoes it's called African Banjo Echoes in Appalachia. So get a copy of the book, African Banjo Echoes in Appalachia, and definitely, even more important for us musicians, get a copy of that CD that's called Black Banjo Songsters of North Carolina and Virginia. So that has extensive liner notes. And then the book is like the liner notes times 100. The book is difficult to navigate for a lot of people. It's got a lot of information jammed in there. I happen to really, really like the book. I think it's very important. But if you want to get the words to some of these songs, we're just saying music by Dink Roberts, John Jackson, John Snipes, those guys. So look up those names: Dink Roberts, John Jackson, John Snipes. Try to learn the original versions of those songs. Those songs were all in standard tuning. Get that CD, and you'll be able to pull up the words. Or just, I don't know, if there's something you can't figure out, email me or something, because I'll be able to tell you what they're saying. Have you ever done the song Policeman? Oh, yeah, I'm sure I have. I know that song. I can't remember how it goes. Are you talking about that song that goes, what you gonna do when the police come, hit them with a brick and make my run? What you gonna do when the police come, honey? What you gonna do when the police come, babe? What you gonna do when the police come? Shoot him in the foot and make my run, honey. I know that song. I don't know if you'd call that Policeman. Oh, Jake Tolbert is asking about my super fancy tailpiece. I've got it right here. I figured somebody would ask about it. Woo! I'm a little intimidated with it, to be honest. It's almost too fancy. But it seems like it's a good solid tailpiece. Those arms are tight. I was reading some of the history of these. So after Ottinger came out with the original tailpiece, a guy named M.A. Ottinger, he came out with the original of this in 1924, I think. So right off the bat, it's a little bit late for my period, the kind of sound I'm after. But thanks a lot, Frank. That's our first super chat ever. Anybody wants to do a little super chat donation, it's certainly welcome. Also, while we're talking about that, it'd be great. We got 38 people in here and only 9 thumbs up. It'd be great if we get 38 thumbs up. That would help. That'd just draw more people in here, more people to hang out with, and it helped me out a lot. Thank you, Frank. But let's keep talking about this tailpiece. So it came out in 1924, I'm pretty sure, and for whatever reason, I think they stopped making them or whatever, and then all these copies flooded the market. So some people they called them a fingered tailpiece, a finger tailpiece or whatever. I've heard different names for them. So some people find these and you think you've got an actual Ottinger, but it could be sort of a 1930s knockoff of one. Anyhow, so one of the problems with the knockoffs was that they didn't have a good, they had too much play in these arms. These arms don't have any play in them. They're pretty solid. So, and then you on some of the cheaper ones, you'd have arms vibrating around freely, which actually is counterproductive. It actually, what this tailpiece is supposed to amplify sound. When you've got a loose arm, it actually reduces the sound of that string. So that's why these things are so expensive. They have to be pretty damn well made. But so the way it works is you just got a string, and then just like any regular adjustable tailpiece, you adjust a knob and it drops that arm, putting more tension on the string. Y'all saw how I did that. The only difference is that whereas most adjustable tailpieces that we use, they control all the strings at once, this one you can do individual strings. So if you've got something special going on, like Jerron Paxton was telling me, he's got a banjo that he wants to play, you know, all the way up to like the 42nd fret or whatever up here, and the banjo the intonation will go out when you get up that high. But he can fix that with one of these tailpieces by adjusting the tension on that string. So there's all kinds of uses for them. I'm also thinking it could be used like the fine tuners on a fiddle. You see how violin players on stage, they're almost never messing with these knobs. They're always messing with the knobs down here on the tailpiece. I don't know. Speaking of really nice tailpieces, I wish that I had a better camera. This is a really nice tailpiece. It looks like an antique bone or ivory tailpiece. This is actually contemporary. This was made not long ago by a contemporary artist who copied these tailpieces, and that is actually made of prehistoric mammoth bone. So that's a mammoth bone tailpiece right there. That's pretty cool. This banjo is pretty neat. I'm really liking this little banjo. Let's see. Awesome. John says, what are good nylon strings to use on an old banjo? I think I've gotten back to these. These are the Labella number 17s. So if y'all remember, I had fishing line on this thing. So I took the fishing line off of it, and just last night before I lay down and went to sleep, I put those new Labella number 17 nylon strings on there. I like these, and I have heard from a number. Y'all know that I've been hanging out with some of the classical musician kids. I'm trying to learn from them. I don't want to learn that music, but I want to learn what they know about banjos and stuff. And I've learned a lot just by talking to people like Aaron Lewis, Joel Hooks, Jerron Paxton. I've probably talked to mostly just because he and I are on the friendliest terms. We actually know each other. So I've talked to him the most, and I've learned a lot just this year talking with those guys about bridges and strings and tailpieces and neck angle and stuff like this. See, this banjo from the 1880s, it has no neck angle. They did not put neck angle on them back then, and they didn't want to. That's how they wanted them set up. It's something about the sound. It's when you do neck angle on a modern steel strung banjo, I think it helps the sound. But apparently if you do neck angle on one of these nylon banjos, it's not old timey, and guys like Jerron and Joel and Aaron will tell you that it ruins the banjo for classical picking for what they want to do. So Labella number 17, John, that was a big long-winded response to your question. The strings that most people are using now, the Nile gut strings, I think they're a little heavy. I think if you want to put them on a more vernacular, like a minstrel style banjo or something, I think that's cool. But for classic banjo, they can be fine. But I've just found that if you're, well, here I am going on a tangent. It really depends on you, because I kind of like them both. Like when I transition back to the Nile guts, they feel so fat. And one thing about these old antique banjos, the nut slots are not that fat. So if you look, and all these banjos were designed for gut strings, basically. If you look at the original notches cut in the nut, they're not that wide. Oftentimes, they can't really properly seat a Nile gut string. I think that's why Nile gut has sort of a wishy-washy reputation among like the classic banjos or traditional banjo players, because the strings are so fat. They don't always just drop down in those old slots. Those old slots are cut narrow. So I think if you want to really mimic that old-timey sound, you heard that fishing line that I had on this banjo, that had that kind of junky tin pan alley kind of sound to it. But what really sucked on it was the bass string. It has no bass, because you really, if you want a good sounding bass string, you got to go with a wound string. I think the wound string sounds better. Jerron Paxton purchases a silk string that's wound with nickel or brass or something, he was telling me. Anyhow, try not to keep talking about Jerron. So yeah, I think labella number 17s, if you just want to slap something on there that you know is going to work, you know it's not going to hurt the banjo, labella number 17s. They're kind of a medium gauge, light gauge almost nylon, but very popular in some circles. How much money would it cost to make my own banjo? And have you done a video of making one? Yeah, in the sticks. I'm in the process of doing a series right now. If you go on Patreon group, I haven't made these videos public, so you have to be a Patreon member for now to see them. Just pay at the $2 a month rate, and you'll see I'm doing a series on building gourd banjos. And right now I'm cutting out a new neck for another banjo. It's probably going to be a gourd. And I'm filming that process now. The hardest part for me is really carving that neck out, getting it right. That's really the most laborious part for me. So I'm in the process of filming that right now. But if you want to see the steps of how I build a vernacular, folk style gourd banjo, those are up on the Patreon site right now. So Sean asks, are there a lot of storytelling banjo songs similar to Little Gold Fiddle or Cumberland Mountain Deer Chase? Seems like a unique style. Yeah, there are. One of the first traditional banjo songs I ever heard was a guy named Ernie Williams from Alabama, who's my first banjo teacher was Ernie. And Ernie did what you could probably call a canafable when he plays Arkansas Traveler. So he plays the song Arkansas Traveler, but then he has breaks where he stops playing and he has a joke in between each verse. I really thought that was cool. That blew me away as a kid. It seemed so old-fashioned. I don't know if that was his original arrangement. More likely he picked that up from somebody in Alabama or something, some old record that he heard. But he plays Arkansas Traveler and then he tells a joke. And the joke is they're all the same. There's an old country man in Alabama sitting on his front porch, and there's this traveler who's not from Arkansas, and he's walking past the house. So the first joke, after Ernie will play a verse, he stops playing, and the first joke is, the traveler says to the old timer, he says, "Hey, old timer, does this road go to Fayetteville, or does this road go to Little Rock?" And the old timer responds, "It ain't gone nowhere since I've been sitting here." So jokes like that. And he had a whole string of those that he would splice in between verses. So I thought that was really cool. I think that qualifies as a song story, a canafable. There's other ones, maybe like Fox Chase. If you've heard some people, when they play Fox Chase, they throw a lot of spoken word into it. Look up, you can even go on my YouTube channel. I made a video of this. Look up a guy named Coy Morton, CoyMorton, Coy Morton, just like the Morton Salt Company. Coy Morton does a great version of Fox Chase, and he's talking all through it, yelling and hooting at the dogs and giving them directions and stuff like that. So that's probably, when you hear something like that, I just thought that strikes me as less of a European style canafable and more of African style, where it's more rhythmic and there's more spoken word and call and response chucked in. Whereas with the more European style canny fable, to me, it's clear that, like Little Gold Fiddle, it's clear that this is a song that predates Anglo banjo playing, that was adapted by Anglo banjoists to the banjo. But if you listen to something like Fox Chase or whatever, that sounds like that could be a really early African American banjo song that probably predates Anglo contact with the banjo. I would just guess, I'm not a complete idiot. I have a degree in archaeology, so I'm not a complete dumbass. I think there's something to that. I can peel away layers and try to get to where I think a song come from. So another example of one that's probably, here's one you can't tell if it's Anglo or if it's African. Muskrat. Yeah, muskrat, what makes you treat me so? Roaming all through these fields, eating up my wheat and corn. I learned that from, what is his name? Great banjo player up in North Carolina. Rick Ward. Look up Rick Ward. I learned Muskrat from Rick Ward. And Rick does a great thing where he'll play the verse, and then after each verse, he has a spoken interjection. So it's not really a canifable style. It's more of that African-American banjo song style. So anyhow, that stuff really fascinates me. I could talk about that all day. I'm missing some questions here. I really appreciate it, y'all. We've got almost 50 people in here right now and 30 thumbs up. It'll really help if everybody gives me a thumbs up and hell, share this around. That would really help get more people in here. So Jake asks, how do those labella number 17s compare to the fishing line? He says the fishing line he's tried in the past has been way too floppy. Yeah, the fishing line is floppy. A lot of people don't like these labella number 17s. Like Bo Wilkie, for example, he always gets on my ass if I'll string a new banjo or something with these number 17s. He don't like them. He likes heavy gauge strings, to each their own. So he says these are too mushy. I kind of like a slightly mushier string. These are I'm tuned really low right now, so they're mushy. If I go up to standard G, they'll probably be perfect for me. But basically, Jake, to answer your question, those unwound fishing line strings, I think they were even mushier. You see how mushy this is. I think they were even mushier than this banjo. It's really hard to play when this is probably tuned down to E or something. In the Sticks says, please recommend a place to buy parts for a banjo build. Well, if you want, there's, of course, my buddy Patrick Sawyer, he runs the Balsam Banjo Works. So look up Balsam Banjo, BALSAM. They have a lot of parts. Rickard Banjos, RICKARD. I believe they're up in Canada. He sells a lot of parts as well. So you can pretty much get everything you need from those two sources to build the banjo. If you need some other stuff or you want to keep shopping around, elderly.com, elderly, ELDERLY, elderly.com. They have a wide selection of banjo parts that you wouldn't expect. I find that when you go to some place like one of the bigger luthier stores like Stuart McDonald, they have just a few banjo parts that are not of much interest to us. Robin says, eating up my wheat and corn. Robin's making me want to smoke right now, but I don't want to do it on camera. And I think he says wheat. He's talking about eating up my wheat and corn in that song. Okay. So Banjovi MD asks, what do you use to preserve the silver and the wood on an old banjo? Okay, well, that's easy. So Banjovi MD, for the metal parts, I don't do anything. I like them to patina. But if you want to polish your silver, and if you actually have like German silver or silver plating or something, if you want to actually clean it up, I would use toothpaste on that. I don't think toothpaste will hurt the wood, but just to be safe, I would take the hardware off the banjo, get you an old toothbrush and some cheap white toothpaste, and coat all that stuff with toothpaste with the toothbrush and then rub it off. That gets a really nice old-timey polish to silverware. I learned that from my grandmother. My grandmother had a whole silverware set, and anytime the family would get together, she would use that silverware, but it would be a little bit tarnished. So she'd make all the kids get around the dinner table with rags and toothpaste, and she'd make us all polish that silverware. Anyhow, it makes toothpaste is really good polish for silver, probably for any metal. If you have brass that you want to really make bling, in the Army, we used to use this chemical called Brasso. Brasso, that's a brass polishing chemical. I would never use that today, but if you really want to do that for some reason. Other thing you can do, Banjovi, is get a rock polishing tumbler, and you can fill that with a bunch of sand or whatever the polishing medium is, and you can dump your banjo hardware in there and turn that on. And it'll tumble, just like what like kids who collect rocks and gems and stuff, they use those rock tumblers. George Gibson told me, he actually gave me an old rock tumbler that I've used sometimes. You just drop your hardware in there, that'll polish it right up. So for the wood Banjovi, you just need to oil it. You can use that beeswax mix that you get from the hardware store. It's called Feed and Shine or something like that. And it's a mixture of beeswax and orange oil. You can get that at like Home Depot. That's good stuff. I'll just use, right now, I have a big bucket of hemp oil that I got. There's a company called the Milk Paint Company, the Milk Paint Company. They don't just sell milk paint, they sell all kinds of old-timey stuff for coatings and painting and finishing. So from the Milk Paint Company, I bought a big jug of hemp oil. Before that, I had a big jug of flax oil. You could go to the grocery store and just get, I don't know, people say not to use olive oil, but I don't give a shit. You could use walnut oil from the grocery store, stuff like that on the wood. Cool. Do you have any tips for learning two-finger style, says Spaz God. Just can't seem to get the hang of it. Well, Spaz, it's if you can play the overhand, what they call clawhammer style, and I've done a video on this. If you look up Clifton Hicks basic two-finger, you'll get a video where I teach you how to transition from clawhammer to two-finger banjo. It's the same rhythm. Like if I'm doing the regular boom chicka lick on overhand, standard. So if I want to play that two-finger, it's the same way. I just anchor 3 fingers and I do this. It's the same thing. So I don't really know what more to tell you than that. It's the same rhythm. Your thumb picks the 5th, 4th, and 3rd, and your index finger picks the 2nd and 1st. And then you're basically, you can use clawhammer tablature. Lay it down in front of you, and instead of playing it overhand, plant your 3 fingers. And with that knowledge I've just told you, where your thumb handles the top 3 and your index handles the bottom 2, you can actually play that straight clawhammer tablature two-finger. Could we get a video on how you play Old Blue? Yes, we'll do that, Sean. We'll definitely do that. That's an easy one. That's an easy one. I'll need to do that. I keep hoping that I'll get Bo back up here because he wants to record that with me. So we'll try to do a video of both of us doing Old Blue. That would be cool. So Jay Harsh says he saw my Darling Cora video a while ago, and he's been coming back to it ever since, but he wants to know if I play anything else. He's been looking into getting into the fiddle. I play a little bit of guitar. I can do basic cowboy chords, rhythm guitar. I can play like Woody Guthrie songs and stuff like that, some of the classic songs. I can also, if I retune the guitar like a 6-string banjo, then I just pick the hell out of it like a banjo. I could play that. I can play the Jew's harp, you know, boingity boing boing boing. I've always been good at that. I can play the hell out of one of those. and I know I can play one song on the harmonica, and that's Rock of Ages. That's the only thing I ever. If I pick up a harmonica and start blowing, Rock of Ages comes out. I don't know why or when I learned that. But other than that, I only play a 5-string banjo. I bought a violin. I traded a guitar to a violin to a guy probably 10 years ago, and I never. I had to get a bow for the violin, and I would have had to get a neck reset on the violin, which would have been a couple $100. And I never did that, and I never learned to play the violin. But I was going to, by God, I was going to be the next hot fiddle player. But nope, that didn't happen. Well, we got a cat in here from Russia or someplace, and if anybody knows what he's saying, I'm interested. A lot of times we get like the video gamers will come in these streams. Like there's a video game that's called Banjo something. So sometimes we get people, foreigners and stuff. Oh, he's asking about Hotel California. Buddy, I'm never going to play Hotel California. I don't like that song. I don't like the original. And I'm damn sure not going to work it out on banjo. So Dave asks, Cliff, have you ever done a video on different tone rings? For example, what's your favorite tone ring, especially for singing in lower registers? That's interesting, Dave. I think the more and more I get into banjos, the older I get, I care less and less about tone rings. One of the best sounding banjos I ever had was a Luscombe standard banjo that had a solid brass, nickel-plated brass pot with a little skinny wooden tone ring in it. I think that tone ring was mahogany or something. Little skinny wooden tone ring in it. Great sounding banjo, but you have to put nylon strings on it. If you put steel strings on that banjo, it sounds like shit. I don't know why. I think it's because it's that metal rim pot. I think that's one thing. I don't like a lot of, if I had to say there's one thing I don't like a big heavy metal tone ring mixed with metal strings. To me, that's like, it almost gives off an electric sound. Like if you ever played a tubaphone banjo, like if you play a Pisgah banjo, one of the fancy Pisgahs that's got a tubaphone in it, that was the first Pisgah I ever played, was one of those. I picked it up and played it. It sounds crazy. It sounds wonderful. You just want to keep playing it, but it sounds crazy. It's like electric or something. So for me, I knew that's not a sound I want for me. That's the other thing too, is you recognize there's sounds that are pretty and you like the sound, but it just may not be the sound for you. So I don't know. And I think that's what I'm coming up with. Like everybody likes the Dobson tone rings now. Those ones, I have one in my Pisgah. Patrick slapped it in there for me. Basically that sheet metal brass donut looking thing that's in the back of the banjo. Little brass bell. People really love those. I'm to where I've decided that I think that sounds better with nylon strings. I think that's really a nylon string tone ring. I think when you, at least in my experience, when you put metal strings over that brass Dobson tone ring, it's too ringy for me. It sounds good, it sounds pretty, but you know, one of my problems is I've grown up for over 20 years playing these old banjos, usually old beat up crummy banjos that weren't quite set up right and stuff, and they have a certain sound to them. That's kind of why I like this little banjo. It has kind of a dry, almost a rude sound to it, and I really like that sound for some reason. So when I get into some of the prettier tone rings like a Dobson or a tubaphone or something, it often sounds too pretty for me. So I would probably prefer like no tone ring, or just a cheap rolled brass tone ring, something like that. Or like what this one has, you guys may be able to see it. It's got the spun over sheet metal tone ring. It's not a tone ring, but it has the metal spun over top and bottom. And really one of my best banjos I ever had that I sold recently to a friend of mine was that Wayman, that about 1910 Wayman. That was just a solid maple banjo with no tone ring. No tone ring in that banjo, and it was one of the best sounding banjos I've ever played. So I think that's true too. Like a lot of the best banjos don't have a tone ring at all. So that's something to think about. I recently picked up a Pisgah banjo that had It had a Dobson tone ring in it and some heavy nylon strings, like Nile gut strings on it, and it sounded fantastic. It sounded wonderful. The response was perfect. It responded perfectly. I was so jealous of that banjo. So Molly wants to know if I can do a video on Dixie in more of an old-timey style. The pickings are slim for that, and the only thing on YouTube seems to be three-finger style. You know who does a great version of Dixie is Mary Z. Cox, C-O-X. Mary Z. Cox. If you look her up, and if you can find her recording of Dixie that she made with, I believe it's her and her husband on guitar. No singing, they just played it, and they played it slow on an old album she put out, I want to say in the 1990s. That's a really good overhand, old-timey version of Dixie. That's really sad sounding, really good version. So if I were to put up a version of Dixie, it probably sounds something like that, but it'd be my own take because I like that sort of that dark, dreary sound, making Dixie a sad song. That's kind of cool. I'll consider doing something like that, Molly. I also think, with all of the drama and, there's this little group of people on the internet that are calling me racist and stuff all the time. So I have to be careful if I come out, hey, we're going to learn Dixie now. They'll be like, oh, look, he's a racist, So there's all this crap I've got to consider. But yeah, Dixie's a pretty song, and I'll if I can come up with a good version of it, I would put it up on the internet and try to teach y'all to play. My problem with Dixie, I mentioned to somebody, I love the A part. The A part, just I blaze right through it, sounds wonderful. But when I get into the B part, it gets kind of wandery. I don't really like the B part in Dixie. It kind of wanders around too much. It's almost like Dan Emmett, they say, the guy that composed it. It's almost like Dan Emmett, he probably stole the A part from an actual banjo song that existed already in the vernacular repertoire. And then he needed to make up a B part. And you can tell the B part doesn't sound as good as the A part. The A part sounds vernacular. B part sounds like it was composed by Dan Emmett. So I don't really, that's the thing too. People say that you shouldn't play minstrel songs because they're racist and stuff. That's all true. I think you shouldn't play minstrel songs because most of them don't sound good. Like Dixie was one of the best minstrel songs they ever come up with, right? And it only sounds good that first part, I think. Hey, thanks a lot for the tip, Sherry. I really appreciate it. Let's see. Oh, Pennsyltucky Reb says Mary Cox's Dixie is on YouTube. Yeah, look it up. Would you ever come to Southern California to play banjo? Yeah, sure. You can get me to come out anywhere if they pay me right. It's just the last place I played, I went up to, I forget if I was recently in New York City. I went up there, PBS flew me up to New York City for some documentary they're doing. They wanted me to play banjo for the documentary. So that's pretty exciting. I'll be in a PBS documentary coming up next couple years or something. And then I think before that, I went to New Orleans. I just a bunch of rich people had a private party. So they paid me some good money to come to New Orleans and play there. But that was the last two times that I made a big trip to go play. But I would go to California, sure. Oh, Memory War says, have you ever considered going to Europe to play a few shows? Well, yeah, sure. I would love to go to Europe to play a few shows. He's suggesting that I tour with Jerron Paxton or somebody like that. Yeah, that would be cool. It's tricky to find. I've been saying for a while they should put together some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Not an ensemble, but you know what I mean. They should like Jalopy Theater, Jalopy Records up in New York. They should put together a group of people to go tour Europe, or something. Right now, they've put together Jalopy, for example. They have a band touring in Japan. So they basically sent some of the old, the main musicians at Jalopy, like Eli, Ernesto, Samoa, some other cats, and sent them to Japan. So they're on tour right now. That would be cool to do. I'd love to go to Japan. Never been anywhere near there. But I would definitely love to go back to Europe. I'm probably most interested in doing like a UK Ireland tour, because that's where all my family come from for the most part, and I feel like there's a lot of connection with our music. So I would really like to do a tour of Britain and Ireland. That would be cool. Then somebody asks if I can play my favorite song backwards. I've never tried. But I think my favorite song is probably East Virginia, which happens to be a really simple song. You probably could play that backwards. Let's see. Yeah, buddy. Got my bridge in the wrong spot. Well, I think I've answered all the questions that are up on the board for now. Anybody got another question? I think we've been doing this for an hour, y'all, so it's been fun. But I'll sign off if everybody's doing good, and go do some stuff. Cool. Marvin's got to go to work. Robin's got to go to work. Cool. Okay. Oh, Alan asks if I can do a video on different tunings. Alan, I have done a video on that. If you look up Clifton Hicks and traditional banjo tunings, I think I did a big 2-part video where I demonstrated every tuning that I know, almost every tuning that I know. I think I probably showed 10 or 12 tunings, and I might know as many as 14 or 15 tunings. So look that up. Stan Weston says, did I get a lot of flack for playing banjo in the Army? No, I didn't, Stan. That's one of the cool things. For those of y'all who don't know, when I was in Iraq, 2003, 2004, we got news in 2004 that we were going to be staying in Iraq indefinitely. You ever heard of stop loss? So that's when you're supposed to leave the Army, but they decide you can't leave. Anyhow, we got stop lost and redeployed back to Iraq. And at that point, I kind of lost my mind. And somebody, my mother, I guess, or my father, had sent me an elderly music catalog just to look through, just something to look at. But I said, to hell with this, I'm going to order a banjo. So I actually ordered a good time banjo out of that catalog. And it arrived. And that was really cool. And I played it. And in those days, nobody had a guitar. Nobody had a violin. People hardly even had little CD players with headphones to listen to. People hardly even, some guys didn't even have that. So you had some guys that had been out there for 12, 13 months, and they hadn't heard a lot of music, and they're really homesick. So everybody knows, no matter how ignorant you are, if you're an American, you look at the banjo, most Americans know what that is. They know it's American. So I had people and my unit was very diverse. It was mostly white guys, but we had a ton of, Filipinos, Haitians. We had a guy from Belgium. We had a guy from Russia. We had guys from Africa. Like I said, Philippines, Puerto Rico, Mexico, people from all over. And then we had all kinds, even like the urban American guys from like Michigan or New York or California, of all colors. Everybody loved the banjo. Everybody would crowd around. I've told this story a lot, and it got to the point where every night they would make me play German War. Every night, if we weren't off doing some crazy stuff outside the wire. At night, people would congregate around where I was, and they'd make me play German War on the banjo. Pretty cool. Oh, Stan, you just got your DD-214 today. Hell yeah. Congratulations. For those that don't know, the DD-214 is the paper you get when you get out of the Army. So congratulations, Stan. Now so they gave you hell when you were playing banjo. They gave me some hell for it too, but it was mostly good natured. They make fun of me a little bit, but mostly not. Mostly people really thought it was really cool. John Borgen says he just carried 2 spoons and a ham bone. Yeah, Pennsyltucky says all his friends look at him like he's got 3 heads when he says he plays the banjo. Yeah. Well, a lot of that, Pennsyltucky, I worked up in Warren, Pennsylvania for about a year working for the Forest Service around Warren and Bradford, where they make Zippos and pocket knives. And I got to say, I got the impression from working up there that people up there in that area, I got the impression that they didn't like Southerners very much. So maybe I'm wrong about this, but I know if I go down to the grocery store down the road here and I'm going through the checkout aisle, no matter who the cashier is, I can put on my smile and talk to that person and charm them, have them smiling and laughing. I'll get along real well with anybody I meet like that, right? But when I was up in Warren and Bradford, Pennsylvania, I would try to chit chat and put the charm on a cashier or a bartender or a waiter or something like that. Nobody was having my Southern charm down there. As soon as my mouth opened and started to make Southern sounding sounds, people would get this look on their face. I don't think that was just my perception. I think that was an actual observation. So probably Pennsyltucky, that's probably has something to do with why your friends and neighbors don't like the banjo, or they think it's funny or something. There's some kind of stigma in those mountains against Southerners for some reason, I think. Now, you won't find a lot of banjo pickers up there. I carried the banjo up there and stuff, and everybody thought that was pretty weird, definitely. Cool. Jimmy says he's just switched to 2-finger playing. Hell yeah. So Mike says he wants to switch from bluegrass to clawhammer, and it's just really tricky. It's really hard, Mike. I don't know what to tell you. Coming from the 3-finger style, trying to get into the overhand or even the 2-finger picking style, I don't know. I did that very early on, so I made the transition probably relatively easily as a 13-year-old kid. But all I can say, I mean, I have videos on it on how to start playing the overhand banjo. So if you look up Clifton Hicks basic overhand banjo, basic clawhammer banjo, that will be the best that I can offer you, Mike. No, Lefty 5-string says he was stationed in Korea back in the 80s. Cool. Hey, Luca. So Eddie says he wants to learn 2-finger thumb lead. Eddie, the best I can do for you is if you look up my video on that, Clifton Hicks basic 2-finger banjo. That'd be the best I can do for you on how to get into 2-finger picking. If you already know how to play the clawhammer style, then I teach you how to transition from that style to the 2-finger picking. Yeah, Pennsyltucky says the funny thing is there's more Dixie flags in PA than he ever saw driving around the South. Yeah, that's true too. It depends on the political climate too. If it's like as we get closer to the election and stuff, like once the primaries are going on, you'll see a lot of the rebel flags will go up around here. Right now, people don't have them, but when it's during election season, they've tied that thing to the back of their truck. Guys are competing. They've got 2 huge rebel Navy jacks on the back of their truck fluttering. I don't know how they don't get pulled over for that. It seems like dangerous, right? Anyhow, First Amendment, I guess. Stan asked if I've ever been to Winfield. It's a bluegrass fest in Kansas. I have not. I don't think I've never even been to Kansas, I don't think. I've been to Oklahoma and Missouri, but I've never been to Kansas. Howdy, greetings from Finland, Mambo Daddy. Oh, let's see. Simone says that later she's going to sit down and try to figure out my version of William Taylor. It's I don't play that in triple C. You could probably play it in triple C. I play it in standard double C tuning, and it's you're doing some modally sounds in there. But I'm pretty sure I play that in double C. It's a tricky piece. I learned that from Josh Hayes. Josh Hayes is a great banjo player from Wilkes and Watauga County up in North Carolina. I should do a lesson on that, Simone. That's a great song. I don't think I've done a performance of it here in a lesson. I think I need to do that. Cool. Well, everybody, I do need to get going. I tried to end this before at the 50-minute mark. We're at the 61-minute mark now. This has been great. Dave Lowe wants me to do a lesson on Bound to Ride. I will have to do that, Dave. If you all just keep after me, if you have lesson requests, performance requests, just keep after me, and I will do them. I maintain several lists that I don't have in front of me right now. But okay, guys, I am going to end this stream. Please do give me the thumbs up before you leave. If you're not subscribed to the channel, that'll really help me, and it may help you too. Also, check out patreon.com/Clifton Hicks if you want to join some of these good people and some future conversations over there. If you want to see any of the private stuff that I upload, close-ups and stuff that I don't show publicly, that'd be great. Yeah, thanks a lot. And share this video. Share any of my videos. That really helps me a lot. Okay, y'all, thanks a lot. This is wonderful. I love doing this. I'm going to try to schedule the next one. In the meantime, if anybody has certain times that work better for you, let me know. Okay, y'all, I'm signing out. Thanks a lot. Ooh.